So, it's Wednesday night at the Golden Door, and I'm Kathy Vaness, and it's my wonderful chance to sit down with a dear friend of mine who I've been working with and talking to and having her here for almost 2 years, as long as I've been here, Annette Shafer, who is more than Annette Shafer from Napa and wine now. She's got a whole story about herself, which I'm going to share with you. Annette Shafer is part owner of Shafer Vineyards. That's where we first met, was in a vintner week, which was pretty amazing in itself. The Shafer Vineyards uses sustainable agriculture to produce Cabernet, Sauvignon, Cabernet and Merlot, and you're also the
Chardonnay.
And Chardonnay, that's right. And you're the author of the Wine Sense Diet, which I definitely want to hear more about that. She brings alive the treasured and joyous traditions of gathering with a family and friends around the dinner table and taking time to savor delicious food and appreciating good wine and good company. And she gives us a seat at the kitchen table of some of Napa Valley's most famous winemaking families. So she's quite popular, as you can imagine. But there's something else that's going on with her life that we're actually excited about. She's now the founder and owner, which I'm always liking her all the time. I'm one of her, I'm sure, best fans,
Exactly.
of Chris.
Yeah, like me.
Like her. Chris Kitchen and Juice,
different now.
specializing, which I'm doing right now, on a nutritious and delicious freshly extracted juice and healthy and flavorful grab-to-go meals in Napa Valley. She has the most exquisite pictures up on the internet of the foods that she's making during the day. Absolutely incredible. She's currently the principal of Live Well, specialized in health and wellness coaching. Her career spans restaurant and hotel experience to the former director of operations and marketing for the Culinary Institute of America. Wow, that's a lot. It's food and family and wine and children. What inspires you?
And you forgot the international relations part that's not in my book.
There you go. What inspires you?
I am the quintessential explorer. I love to learn, and I love to share it with people.
Were you always that way? As a little girl, were you the girl that always said, were you all the curious girl?
I was always sitting in the front row, I was that girl. Yeah.
Well, we're kind of excited because you photograph the most beautiful food, and you have this keen interest in eating healthy. Did you not eat bologna sandwiches when you grew up? You always ate perfectly healthy? I mean, I don't know. I grew up, that was a good thing. Who ate Spam? Come on, for 5 minutes we did. Yes, thank you. Somebody has to raise their hand. Thank you.
Because it was put on the plate.
Exactly,
not
but
a
not
choice.
today.
Not today.
Exactly.
Well,
So
I grew
what
up.
made you change?
Well, in my household, so I gave you a little bit about my grandfather, who's German. My both grandmother and grandfather. I grew up in a German household because both of my parents worked. My mom is a computer programmer. My dad was Federal Systems Division, IBM, and so daycare was grandparents. And the German household had a very different take on what food was. Sitting around the table at dinner, they would have a glass of wine. In the morning, breakfast was very hearty. So I grew up the way I basically eat now, with a little edification, but I grew up in Alabama, so I had a little bit of that, the Spam and the fried chicken and the mashed potatoes and the gravy. So I had a little, never really loved all of that piece of it, but I grew up that way. So when I had a choice, I chose more and more to go the direction that I am now.
And did you do it as a young adult, or as more as you became even an adult with your own family?
When I finally went to college, I went to actually Michigan State for 1 year, took all the food courses they had, all the hotel courses, and I said, okay, I'm done now. The snow's up to here. I have to go somewhere else. So I went to the Culinary Institute in Hyde Park, learned a little bit more about food, but still ate this way. I was really appalled at the way the chefs salted before tasting, added fat for no reason. But I went through, I graduated, everything was great, well and good on that. But I always had this propensity to seek out the fresh flavors, the seasonality. How can you bring out these flavors without masking them? And there's a lot what Greg talks about now too. So it was always somehow inside me a drive.
Well, there's one of the things that we wanted to talk about tonight. There's a lot of noise today in the world of food and diet and what to eat, what not to eat. Each night that we sit down with a guest, we want to give something back to our guest. When you look through all the noise, is there something that really resonates with you that's like the most important message that we could possibly have as beings to be better and healthier?
The one message I think that's easy to take away, and it's not new, you've all heard it, that we're in control of 80% of our health and well-being through diet and exercise.
It's pretty profound.
80%. So you can change, and I think everybody here probably has heard that. I mean, you can really change whether it's disease, dis-ease, that's where disease comes from, whether it's cancer, whether it's just chronic inflammation. You can change a lot of things with diet and how you approach exercise, how you move. And so that's the one message. The other piece of it to me, and I was talking to Jackie tonight, who is my masseuse, we had a nice long conversation, that it's often, if you feel like you are driven to eat something that's really bad for you, what's taking you there? It's not that your body wants it or needs it. Maybe there's a piece of it that your body does, but there's something else going on in your life that's unbalanced. So that's what I talk about a lot in my wellness coaching.
I think that's really important.
Is that it's the whole person. It's not just nutrition or exercise or how are you successful, what your work is. You're a whole person, and eating is a very important part of it. But if you're eating the wrong things, what's happening? Because we all know better. We all are very smart. We're intelligent beings. So mindfulness, when it comes from the fork into the mouth, what's happening there.
Because when everybody leaves here, we've spent, today's Wednesday, so we know what happens on Wednesday. This is the big transformation of your diet. We've been feeding you from the ground and from our own biodynamic gardens. And we want to leave here and be able to take that back with us and keep it going.
Right.
It's hard though.
It's difficult. So I always encourage people to take one or two things back with them. What are one or two things that you've learned here that you can incorporate into your life? You can't do everything, well, maybe eventually, but what are one or two things that you've learned or that really work for you here, and take it back.
And keep doing it.
And keep doing it. And that might be food, that might be something else as well.
Well, I'm going to jump for another place. You're now an owner and a founder of a new business. Oh my gosh, you're quite infamous in your own right and at the Shafer business and your own Napa business. What in the world made you decide to go into here? I know that when we first met you were just talking about it, but now you've done it.
It's very difficult, I have to say. Great idea. Yes. And very difficult to believe also that in the Napa Valley there is not a fast, healthy, fresh grab and go. We have everything. We have the most beautiful produce. We have wonderful farmers, organic everything. But we have, I think probably because it's driven by the public that comes by the visitors, we have very decadent restaurants. We have French Laundry, we have Press, even Farmstead. You can't get away from it. So where do I go to eat? It's difficult, because you're there every day. If I'm visiting, okay, well maybe, but for the people who live there. And so I had an amazing, resounding amount of support from people locally because they really want fresh. They want to control how much dressing goes on the salad, if they want crunch today or not. I was talking about the grain bowls, the macro bowls we do. Nobody is doing that. Everybody in New York's doing that. Everybody in San Francisco. But in Napa Valley, nobody's really addressing that need. So I felt a need no one else is doing it, right? So I felt a need to really put my foot in the door and say, let's try it.
So describe your business and its mission. Do you have a mission? Describe the actual business. It's juices and fast food?
It's really...
to go, fast, healthy to go?
It's to go, but it's really to help people. It's convenience. It's health and convenience. That's the bottom line. A lot of people want to do it. They don't have time to do it. Juicing takes an awful long time. Putting together salads sometimes takes a long time, and we can get it from sources better than people can even from the farmer's market, which is great. So it's trying to get the right food, delicious, healthy food to people conveniently.
Well, and we've seen so many juice shops, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many.
Right, and I don't want to jump in with the sharks, as Danny Meyer would say. Don't jump in with the sharks.
Don't jump in with them, they're everywhere.
It's because I don't just drink juice. I eat food, I drink a little bit of juice,
So
I do
direct
have dessert.
to consumer, or you go to the
direct
business?
To consumer.
So you definitely have to reach you have to have a store.
You have to have a store. So right now, I'm not in a store, and that's the next step.
Right, that's what I was going to say. What's the next step?
Well, the next step is actually nice to be here because I have to decide whether that step is viable. Yeah. Joy is smiling over there. She knows just what I'm talking about. Because what happens is all of a sudden you have this great idea, everybody loves it, and then you end up not doing what you love the most. Now I'm managing people, and I'm dealing with workers' comp, and I'm dealing with insurance. Like, wait a minute, so I'm moving further and further away from the piece that's driving me. But we'll see what happens because it's important for this to survive where it is.
Well, and I think that one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, you are such a believer in this food and you speak it so well. Are you developing the ability to go out and start to talk to people and sort of train people and speak to people? Is your own sensibility in healthy living something that's marketable, just
Well,
as a conversation, like we're having the conversation?
Right, it is. And I'm actually getting calls from people in Napa. People are coming in groups are hiring me. So I'm not going
Nice.
anywhere. They're coming
That's
to me,
nice.
which is great. There was a woman who turned 50 last week, and she had friends coming in from all over all during the week. So she had me come in several times during that week and have different conversations, different wellness topics. I provided juice and breakfast and some lunches for them during the week, and so that was great.
Because that could be big.
A couple of tour companies have said, we don't really have anybody to talk about wellness in the Napa Valley, which is crazy. So all of a sudden,
Isn't that
that's becoming. They talk wellness. They have a lot of spa type programs, but nothing more around it.
Yeah.
So it is marketable, I think.
Well, so I'm going to jump to my last conversation, which what do you think?
And they're going to start to pay me.
That's what I think. That's what I was bringing. I was going to tell her off the record.
As usually, right?
I say you.
My husband's like, stop giving away your knowledge.
We're your best supporters.
I know.
that.
I'm kidding.
Juicing. I'm going to go to the end of this and talk about what do you think of the current growing trend? Of course, everybody's joking because I've had your carrot juice about 5 times this week. It's delicious.
Have you learned how to juice 5 Guys yet? Though?
No, that is a major problem. I would like to juice 5 Guys. Anybody know 5 Guys? It's good. Yeah. It's not a juice, but it's really good. And I should not be eating it. But what do you think of this juicing trend?
Well, I talked about that earlier this week.
Yeah.
And it's extreme. And anything to the extreme, I don't believe in. I think you can incorporate a little bit of many things, but if you only juice for a certain amount of time, and this is just my opinion because other people have other opinions, you lose the value in what that is. And so if you juice for 2 or 3 days, well, maybe okay. But it's a lot of carbohydrates, it's not a balanced diet, so you're missing your protein, so eventually you're going to start losing muscle mass if you juice too long because it's an unbalanced diet. And it really plays havoc with you. I don't know if you've noticed. I mean, it's a good thing that you're doing it too, because you'll notice that you start to feel kind of wacky, and then you're mad at everybody, and the stress level. I mean, it's a funny thing. Well, maybe ask your staff.
No, I'm okay. I'm on a unique journey that we're testing different foods, vegans, vegetarians, raw, and juicing. From the point of view of the guest, I live here on property, for those of you who don't know. So I'm a guest for 4 weeks. So if I'm eating raw, I'm a guest 4 times, and we have to feed that guest raw 4 times. Yes, you got the drill, right?
Yes.
And let me tell you something, I'm getting a bit hungry on the 4th week because I have the same salad as I had on the 1st week. And so it's been a learning curve for Chef Greg and I to how do we handle that? What do we actually make?
And
we've done the juicing, so we can't just juice for a couple days because unfortunately it's not enough experience.
Right.
So I found out I had the carrot juice 3 times in a row. I go,
That's pretty good.
I think we need a new juice.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, and what you said right now too, though, variety.
Yeah.
I really advocate variety in your diet. Lots of color. If you have lots of color in your diet, you can't go wrong. I eat a lot of fish. Careful with my sources, but I eat a lot of vegetables and color, and keep it interesting. Because if it's not interesting, you're gonna fall off and get bored.
Yeah. So does anybody here juice? Has anybody here tried juicing for 2 or 3 days? It's kind of fun, I think. Don't you feel like a little? I think it does lighten you a bit.
It does.
It does. And you have to make sure you don't eat the burger at the end of the juicing part.
Well, what happens oftentimes is people will, but I was just going to say, well, some
good idea.
Some people here have told me their daughters, as I say, do this for a week. And then if you do it for a week or 3 days and then use that to jump off to a more healthful diet,
I think that's
great.
Yes,
but I think a lot of people,
they revert too
exactly.
fast.
They say, well, I'm going to take care of it in 3 or 4 days.
No.
Then I'm going to go back to my normal diet. Oh, in a month I'll do it again. And that's why, and my inbox is full because I've signed up for all these companies to see what they're doing, is 15% off of this cleanse for this week, 30% off this week.
Nasty.
Here's the code, because they have to drive their business that way, which is nasty.
They want you to keep buying it.
Right, but it's perfectly fine if you use it to jump off into a more healthy.
I think so too. I think so. We're actually developing a juicing mini, using some of your ideas because you have such great juices that we really do like.
Thanks.
So one of the last questions that I want to ask before I'm going to actually have just a couple. How do you define? In your words, for your life, how does your life of healthy living go? You've got a busy life, you've got a new company. Are you stressed?
Not today.
Not today, because you're at the Golden Door.
Not today. Yeah.
But it's hard,
it's
isn't
tricky.
it?
It's tricky.
You
I have a
to balance
10-year-old
that.
and a 14-year-old.
Exactly.
A wonderful husband, an active winery. We travel. a new business, it's not possible to do everything perfectly.
No.
It's just not. So there's always a trade-off. And that's part of the discussion now too, is that when is the right time to attack certain things, and maybe it's time for me to pull back on something to give more emphasis to something else. So it's always, I don't think you ever live a balanced life, but you're always maintaining a balance, trying to, the scale is going one way, then you're moving a little bit this way. So that's how I handle it.
So you sound like you're kind of there then. This is a different place than you were maybe a year ago.
It is.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because I know you now a couple years, so to me this feels different than where you were. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
one of the last things, we talk about eating with a sense of balance. So what we want to all know before we know, because we know what to do, right? We want to know what your cravings are. What do you crave? You can't only crave lettuce and celery. We don't want to hear that. We love you.
The
But we'd
avocado
love to
chocolate
hear.
mousse is great.
That was good,
That
right?
was good.
Do
You
have
don't always
anything
just
that's
have to eat
like,
lettuce.
do you have to have something, you just say, I just crave that. I just have to have that. Because you're Annette Shafer.
That is really
and you're
interesting.
Mrs. Wellness. But
Mrs. Wellness, yeah.
you're Mrs. Wellness.
So my answer to that is a little bit of a longer
Okay, good.
answer. So that when I first met my husband, he was 25 pounds heavier, but he wasn't heavy. I mean, he was just 25 pounds heavier. He's 6'1". He ate a lot of potato chips, burgers, you name it, he ate it. He wanted to change his diet a little bit, but I couldn't do anything for him because I was his wife, and the closer you are, the more difficult it is. So I just started cooking the way I cook, doing things the way I do, and he kept looking and watching, and finally, eating a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. Gosh, I don't need so much. That whole bag of potato chips, that's not appealing anymore. Oh, okay, that's good, And then finally he said to me, well, that burger, I really dislike everything else on the bun, not the burger. I'm like, oh, like, a little secret sauce, a little, whatever. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So we've been together almost 22 years or whatever, but his diet has totally morphed, and he doesn't have those cravings for that big juicy burger, and those chips were his thing. I mean, he doesn't have that anymore. So when you say what are my cravings, it's interesting because I really crave, if I don't have my green smoothie in the morning with a little bit of almond butter and cayenne and my kale, I miss it.
Well, that's our inspiration for the morning.
There you go. Yeah, right. I mean, I do eat ice cream, and I love a little chocolate every now and then. I mean, it's not, it's always 80-20.
That's okay.
Yeah, but I don't really have any big cravings because I think if you put the right thing in and you try to be balanced in the rest of your life, you're not trying to overcompensate with too many Five Guys. I don't know.